Welcome to the Cash Flow Couple Podcast. I am your hostess with the mostest, Wynde Williams. How you doing? Down here in the basement with my husband, Johnny John. It's so funny that the kids like to say, "What does John mean?"
No, but they ask Google. That's the thing.
They ask Google.
Okay, Google.
What does John mean? And when it comes up the toilet, they just hee-haw.
Yeah, it literally says, "John, a toilet." And they just think that's hilarious. Now, John doesn't think it's all that funny, but they think it's hilarious.
Wynde also thinks it's hilarious.
So you're saying basically you and the children have the same mindset.
Yeah. Good stuff. Well, today we would like to talk about investing in non-performing notes. And I just got back from a conference. Well, not just got back, but it's been a couple of weeks.
A couple of weeks ago, yeah.
Well, it was like drinking from a fire hose, the amount of information that I got out of that conference, that it took a little while to process.
And you had to come back and teach me all about notes. So you had to sit through the class and then come back and teach the class. But that's a good way to learn, right?
It really...
If you have to explain it, don't you know it better just from having to explain it? Yeah,
from just having to explain it. But it was very good. It was in Tampa, put on by Paige Panzarello, who is the cash flow chick, and one of her mentors named Joseph, and I cannot remember his last name.
Uncle Joe.
We'll
just call him Uncle Joe.
We'll call him Uncle Joe, yes. And one of our mentors, Tyler Sheff, was there. So it was great to actually get to meet Paige and get to spend a little time with Tyler and his wife, Jill. So that was good. So let's start out with the basics. What is a note? So a note is a document that says you promise to pay a debt. It's the paper that you sign that says, "I, Wynde Williams, heretofore from now and forever,
right? Yeah.
Till death do us part."
Yeah, it has all the legalese. Yeah,
the legalese here agree to pay Wells Fargo $100,000 to be paid back at $500 a month for 30 years. But basically, it's the terms of your agreement.
Right. So it's like the 6-page document that basically says you borrowed $100,000. It's at 6% interest for 30 years. Here's your payment.
Yes.
But it takes 6 pages to do that because you've signed your life away, right?
Exactly.
And then you sign at the bottom.
Exactly.
So it's physically a piece of paper.
Yes.
Okay.
So that's why it's called paper.
Yeah, you hear that sometimes.
Yeah.
It's called, you hear notes, or you hear it's called paper, holding paper.
Right, holding paper.
And that's why you're literally holding paper.
Right.
Or Wells Fargo is in this case, right?
Right. So that's basically what a note is. And I remember talking about the difference between a note and a mortgage when I was going through real estate school, but it wasn't until I sat through this conference where it really solidified that difference for me. So the difference between a note and a mortgage, I always thought that a mortgage was the note.
Well, that's the way we talk, right? We say, "Have you paid the mortgage?"
Right. I just said that the other day. "Have you paid the mortgage?" And John's like, Technically.
Well, now you're doing it, so
that's true. But it took going through this conference to solidify the difference, that there is a difference between a note and a mortgage.
Yeah, they're actually two different things that are related, right? But they're different things. Yeah.
So we just talked about what a note was. So the mortgage is the collateral.
It's the security instrument.
Yes. So it's the security document with the house as collateral.
Right. So it's the thing that says if Wynde heretofore does not pay her $500 a month, then what's their remedy? And it's
take back
they
the
can
house.
take the house,
yes,
right?
Exactly. So there's a mortgage and there's a deed of trust.
Right. So those are two different. They're both kind of the same thing.
They're the same, but
they're
it
both
depends
security
on the
instruments.
state. So each state is you either have a mortgage or you have a deed of trust. And here in North Carolina, we have a deed of trust, but they're basically the same thing.
Yeah,
right?
They're both securing the note.
Right. Yes.
But it defines how does the bank get the property back if you don't pay?
So if you don't pay and you have a mortgage, your state is a mortgage state, then that means that if you don't pay, you have to go in front of a judge, and that's called a judicial state.
Right. So the bank goes to the court and says, Wynde heretofore hasn't paid. Here's the proof of that. And then they say, okay, you're selling the house and taking it back.
Right.
And that's different from what we have here in North Carolina, right?
We have a deed of trust.
Right.
So that means that a trustee holds the
security instrument.
The security holds the security.
So the deed of trust is the security instrument.
Right.
It's kind of like the title's held in trust. So if
that's how I think of it.
Yeah,
yes.
so and they're the trustee. So
right. It's
in
usually
the same
an attorney.
Right. So in the same scenario, Wynde heretofore doesn't pay Wells Fargo. Well, they don't have to go to the judge, right? They just go to the trustee.
Right.
And the trustee says, yeah, you're right. And then the trustee has the power to sell the property.
Right.
Right.
Exactly.
And that's the biggest difference. You also hear it called judicial and non-judicial states.
So if you have a mortgage, you're in a judicial state because you have to go before a judge.
Makes sense.
And if you are in a deed of trust state like
then
North Carolina,
non-judicial.
Then that is considered a non-judicial state.
Judicial is hard for me to say.
Judicial.
I want to say jujitsu.
I almost wanted to say jujitsu. Judicial. So why is that important to know? So which one do you think is going to take longer?
It's got to be the court, right?
It's definitely going before a judge and going to the court.
And it's going to be more expensive.
And it's going to be more expensive.
Because now instead of going to the trustee, I've got to hire a lawyer that basically goes and sues, right? It's a lawsuit.
Right.
A deed of trust state is not a lawsuit. It's just you've signed a document saying if you didn't pay. And so it's much quicker, it's cheaper. And so you need to know that because as a note investor, you are Wells Fargo, right? You're the bank.
You're the bank.
So you always have to be thinking, if I have to take back the property, how am I going to do it? How much time is it going to take? And what's it going to cost me? And it's especially important if you're doing like we are, investing in non-performing notes, which means, hey, they already aren't paying when you bought it, right?
Okay, well, that is a really good lead into what we were going to talk about next, which is what are we looking for when we purchase a note? We are looking for a non-performing note, which means the borrower has stopped paying.
Okay.
So we're also looking for a first position. I'm just going to list them. So we're looking for non-performing, first position, owner occupied, preferably underwater.
Meaning they owe more than the property's worth.
Right.
Okay.
And we'll talk about that a little bit more in depth in a few minutes. Preferably underwater and preferably on with a property with a fair market value of $100,000 or less. So that's our criteria.
And preferably non-judicial states.
And preferably in a non-judicial state like North Carolina. So let's go through what those mean. So non-performing means that the borrower has stopped paying.
Right. And that's important because if they're not paying, well, here's the thing to know about notes. Anytime you buy a note in general, most of the time, you're buying it at a discount. And that just means if the unpaid balance on the loan is $100,000, and I'll use 100 because that's easy math. If the unpaid balance is $100,000, if they're currently paying, then in general, you're going to pay 80 to 90% of that. So you're going to give them $80,000 to $90,000 for that $100,000 note, and then you're going to take the payments over time. if it's non-performing, then you're going to buy it at much steeper discount, right?
Right.
Because those payments aren't coming in, and now you've got to do a lot of work, or you've got to go foreclose, and that's expensive, or whatever, right? So that's one of the reasons that we look for the non-performing, because you can buy them at a steeper discount.
Yes. So we're looking at non-performing because we can get them at such a steep discount.
Correct.
That's why. And first position means that we get paid first in case of foreclosure.
Correct. So you never, well, I shouldn't say never, but the ones we're looking for are first position because we want to be first in line, especially since they're not paying, right?
Exactly. Yes. So we also want owner-occupied properties.
Right. And that becomes important later when we talk about what we do with these notes after we get them.
Right. So we'll talk about that later. Preferably underwater, which means that they owe more than the house is worth. So for example, if they owe $150,000, but the house is only worth $100,000, we actually prefer those.
Yeah, we're looking for those.
Those are the ones that we are looking for, and we will talk about why when we talk about a little bit in a few minutes about
what we do with them after we buy them. Yeah.
Yes, how we exit those notes. And we're also looking for properties with a fair market value of around $100,000 or less.
Right, and I think that's just more how much capital do you have to outlay,
right.
But it's also those are bread and butter properties,
yes,
right?
They're like the everyday middle income type of properties.
So when you go to sell it, it's going to sell fairly quickly.
Right.
It's not like you're buying $1 million home where
I mean, there's more people in the market looking to buy those types of properties.
So you're looking for regular bread and butter, working class type.
Right, exactly. So let's talk about the process of buying a note. So I'm going to list them. I'm going to list the process, and then we're going to talk about each one. So the first one is we find a note, then we do due diligence on it, and then we buy it, and then we figure out what our exit strategy is going to be.
Yeah, we start working on it.
And then we either sell it, the note, or decide what to do with the property if we happen to get the property. So let's talk about each one of those individually. So when we find a note,
where are we going to find these notes?
Right.
That's what I want to know. Where are we going to find these?
Well, let me tell you, John. You can find them at smaller banks, hedge funds, other note investors have them for sale all the time, and exchanges online like PaperSource or whatever.
There's a Paper Stack. I think there's Notes Direct.
Notes Direct, yeah.
I'm not endorsing them. I just know they're there.
Right,
You know, there are places you can go online and
but
buy.
they're just exchanges where they take a percentage
of the purchase price.
Like 1% of the purchase price, and that's how they make their money. But that's a place to purchase notes. So, and we also, when we find one, we also want to make sure that it fits the criteria that we talked about before, the non-performing, first position, owner-occupied, underwater, and fair market value of less than $100,000.
Yeah. So a lot of this stuff, it relates very much to buying real estate.
It does.
It sounds like
it?
almost the same process.
You still do due diligence.
You're still finding them. You do your due diligence on it.
Yep.
You make the decision to buy it or not.
Make an offer. Yep.
And then you when you buy it, you have an idea of what you're going to do with it. Am I going to fix it, flip it, or am I going to rent it?
Exactly.
In this case, are you going to keep the note, or are you going to, we have other exit strategies because it's a note.
Yep.
But I find that interesting that the process is very kind of similar. It has parallels.
It sure is, yes. So after we have found one that from some of those sources that fits our criteria, then we're going to do some due diligence on it.
And this is the heavy lifting.
So
you guys spent more time on due diligence than anything else.
We spent a whole day and a half, if not more, on due diligence. Yes, because it is so tedious.
Yeah. So due diligence the underlying property is real estate. So some of it is going to look to see, is the property actually there, right?
And not necessarily like you in particular. I mean, if you've got a note that you're looking at in Ohio
and you live in North Carolina, I'm not driving up there.
Exactly. Yeah. So you're going to send an agent, a real estate agent, to put eyes on the property, maybe take some pictures of the outside, maybe come up with some kind of
an opinion on price,
right? Some market value price, what they think that it would sell for,
what it might rent for,
Yes. So you're going to do that kind of due diligence. You're also going to get what's called a collateral file.
Yeah, so that was due diligence on the property itself.
Yes.
And then you're actually going to do due diligence on the note. Right,
yes.
And that's what you're talking about. You get the collateral file.
The collateral file, and you're going to get an electronic collateral file, and you're also going to get the actual documents through the mail.
Right, the originals.
The originals, yes.
So
through the mail.
Part of what you're looking at in the due diligence for that is the basics of it is all the paperwork in order?
Right. So you need to verify the chains of ownership have been passed down correctly, and there's all this stuff like allonges and assignments you got to look at. We're not going to talk about that right now because that's really, really tedious work. But you're just making sure that the paperwork is in order. Basically.
And you're also looking, are there liens on the property going back to the property? But you're looking for that sort of thing.
Good point.
There's a lot that goes into it.
Right.
And so it's very it's something that takes some time, and it takes some expertise to say, is this a good note? Because really what you're looking for is this a debt I can collect on?
Yes.
Because it would be bad to buy a note and then find out you've bought something that's worthless because either the house, maybe it burned down last year, right? And there was no insurance.
You can't always count on Google Maps, can you?
Right. Or maybe, and because notes themselves are bought and sold all the time, maybe 3 owners ago they didn't dot their I's and cross their T's, and legally it would be hard for you to actually go foreclose, right? So you have to know what to look for, and that's what you learned at the conference, right?
I believe that is what we spent most of the time doing, which I'm very thankful for. It was very good. It was really in depth.
So say it looks good, that we've done our due diligence.
Yes. So then we're actually going to purchase it, and we're going to be purchasing it at a discount based on the
value of the property.
Yes, the fair market value of the property.
Right.
The current fair market value of the property.
Right. So the unpaid balance in what we're looking at is much less important than what is the underlying asset worth.
Yes.
And the reason for that is, well, they're not paying on the note, right? And we're also targeting properties that are already underwater.
Yep.
So if they owe 150 and the house is worth 100, then we're looking to buy these notes at
50 or
55 to 60%, 50%, 60% of the value of the house.
Yes.
So we're buying $150,000 in debt for $50,000 to $60,000.
Exactly.
Right?
Yes.
That's the beauty of a note. See, now I've gotten an extreme discount on the debt, but I've also, if I end up with a house, I just bought a $100,000 house for 50 to 60.
Yep. How cool is that? So after we have purchased it, then we start working on which exit strategy in general, what we're going to be doing with it. So basically, I mean, this isn't always the case, but in general, we have an order of preference that we like to do to go through to start with. So the first one, I'm just going to list them and then we'll talk about them. So the first one is reperforming. The second one is deed in lieu. Number 3 is short sale. And number 4 is foreclosure. So let's talk about reperforming.
So this is getting them paying again, basically.
Right, yes. So, and there are 3 different ways that we generally look to do that. So the first one is just a reinstatement, and it doesn't happen often. I mean, that's what happened with Oscar. Remember Oscar?
Yeah, the guy we were helping that was in foreclosure.
Right.
So this was on the other side of it. See, we didn't own the note. We were just trying to help the homeowner. But he was behind in payments, and he owed, I think it was something like $14,000 or something in back payments, and he didn't have $14,000. But he got I think it was a workman's comp claim or something.
Right.
And so he was able to reinstate the loan, which means he just caught it up and started paying again.
Which doesn't happen very often.
It really doesn't, especially you would think on an underwater property.
Right.
Because not everybody has a workman's comp claim coming in.
Right.
That was kind of an unusual situation.
Right. So we can also do a workout. Right.
So this is where you're going to work with the homeowner, and you're going to do some sort of adjustment. Maybe the payments are too high for them, and you're going to lower the payments. Maybe they need more time to pay. Maybe maybe whatever it is, right? You're going to work it out. And so here's one of the really cool, interesting strategies along the lines of get it reperforming.
Yeah, this is the part that I like the best.
This is really cool. And this is the reason that Paige recommends that we go, target non-performing underwater notes, right?
Yes.
And owner-occupied, because, well, if they're not living there, they're probably not likely to start paying either.
Right.
Basically, here's just a basic scenario, just using dry numbers so the math is easy. So go back to that house. It's worth $100. They owe $150. We bought it for, let's say, $50. Okay. So we could go to the homeowner and say, look, I know the house is underwater. We'd like to, first of all, would you like to stay? If they'd like to stay in the home, then that's great. Let's see if we can work something out. So here's what you can do. You can say, Bill, maybe the guy's name's Bill. Bill, if you start paying, for the next 6 months, let's say, then we'll forgive $25,000 of the total amount that you owe.
And you can do that because you're the bank.
Right. I own the debt. So I can do that. I can forgive the 25.
Mm-hmm.
And then, if you pay for the next 6 months after that, then I'll forgive another 25.
And that gives them some incentive.
Yeah. So now at the end of that period, he's no longer underwater because he has a $100,000 house that he owes $100,000 on.
Yep.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
And so I've helped him. He's stayed in the house. But now what do I have? I have a
performing
note.
Yes.
Because the seasoning period for these
is a year.
So once they've started paying, and it's called reperforming because at one point they weren't paying, but now it's a performing note. They've been paying for a year, and now a performing note I can sell
for 80% of its value.
Generally 80 to 90%. We were talking about buying performing notes, right?
So if you've just purchased this note for $50,000,
and then maybe I spend another $5,000 on the lawyers and the team to get it worked out, right? There's costs associated with that. And then go ahead.
So you've paid $55,000 for this note.
All in. Yeah.
All in.
Just hypothetically.
And you can sell it for $80,000.
Yeah, let's just say I can sell it for 80%. So I can sell it for 80.
Let's just say that you can sell it for $80,000.
Because the unpaid balance is now 100.
Right.
And the value of the asset is 100.
But you can't sell it for $100,000. You're going to have to sell it
right,
for a little bit. Right,
because notes sell at a discount.
Yes, because notes sell at a discount. So let's just say that you're selling it for $80,000. How much money have you just made?
Well, I've made $25,000.
You've just made $25,000.
And I've received payments for 12 months.
Exactly.
So I've cash flowed for 12 months.
Yep.
And then at the end of those 12 months, I just made $25,000 on my $55,000 investment.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
So figure the returns on that.
I don't know.
That's a pretty healthy. That's a pretty healthy return.
I would
for
say
a year.
that was healthy. Yes.
It's north of 40%.
Wow.
Right.
That's incredible.
So that is why the workout is the preferred method, because I want to then never own the property, get it reperforming. So it's kind of like doing a rehab on a note. It's like a fix and flip note.
It's doing a rehab on a note.
But the great thing about it is they get to stay.
They get to stay.
They get to stay, and they're no longer underwater.
Oh my gosh! And their kids get to keep going to school.
Yeah. So this is the part Wynde likes. She gets all passionate about this.
Yeah, that's why I like it. Yeah. So that's the beauty of getting these notes to reperform.
Yeah, everybody wins. That's a win-win all the way around.
It's beautiful. It's absolutely beautiful. So the next workout exit strategy, the first one was reperforming. So the second one is deed in lieu.
Yeah, so this is like, because remember I asked that question, do you want to stay?
Right.
Well, what if the answer is no?
Right. So this is a deed in lieu of foreclosure.
Right.
So they hand over the deed and the keys to the house and walk away.
And you forgive the debt.
So but you can do that because you're the bank.
Exactly. So you're literally exchanging the house for what they owe.
Yes.
And that is helping them as well because that 150 just went away.
Yep.
I got a house worth 100 that I paid 50 for.
Right. So now we already know what to do with the property.
Yeah, if we get the real estate, we know what to do with that.
We already know.
And so those exit strategies end up being just as if you bought the real estate, right?
Yeah.
So
except we bought it at a discount.
Right. You can wholesale it to a wholesaler. You can sell it to a fix and flipper. You can rent it out.
Yep.
Right. You can fix and flip it yourself.
Yep.
I mean, there's all sorts of things you can now do with that real estate. But the beauty of it is you were able to buy it at a discount.
Yep. It's gorgeous.
Because you bought the debt, not the house.
Right.
And you just ended up with the house.
Yep.
Because of the deed of trust or the mortgage.
Genius. Genius. Okay, so we've got number 1, reperforming. Number 2, deed in lieu. Number 3 is a short sale. And this is where basically the homeowner is selling it for you.
Yeah, so you're making a deal with them. They're saying, look, you know it's only worth 100. We know it's only worth 100. Let us sell it for 100 or 90 or whatever they can sell it for on the market. Let us get an agent. Let us sell it. Whatever we can get for it, we'll give you that, and then we can walk away. And now they don't have the foreclosure. They still have the short sale,
right? Yeah,
which doesn't
affect your
most cases I think affects your credit, but
not as much as a foreclosure does.
Yeah, it's not as bad as a foreclosure,
right?
From what I'm told,
right.
But yeah, that in that case, again, you end up with not the property, right? You end up with the money.
With the money, yeah. Okay. So the last one is foreclosure.
Yeah, and this is the one. This is like your last resort, right? You can't do something else,
right?
You have no choice,
right? Yeah. So, but you need to make sure that when you do your due diligence, that foreclosure is a possible option.
Right. And that's why you did all that, right? Had the agent go look, figured out what it was worth and all that.
Right. So, I say the agent because you're not necessarily going to be doing all this work by yourself, right? I mean, you have key team members that are going to be helping you, and an agent is just one of them. I mean, you're going to need some boots on the ground to go look at it and do a CMA, a current market analysis, and you're also going to need a servicing company.
Yeah, so we've been talking about this like John and Wynde are calling up the homeowner.
We're not. No,
that's not the way you do business.
No,
right?
No, it's not.
There are laws you have to follow.
Yes.
You're collecting a debt. You can't just call somebody up. Well, I guess you can, but there are rules that you have to follow, and you want professionals on your team that know what those laws are and do the things the right way. For example, bills have to be in a certain font.
Yes.
Certain margins on a page. Didn't you learn all this stuff?
Crazy?
Yeah.
That's insane. That blew my mind.
Yeah. So you want a servicing company that basically when you buy the note, you give it to them, and they're kind of like a property manager.
They're kind of like the property manager.
They're a property manager for the note. So
Yep.
they send the bill, they collect the payments, they do all of that, calculate the late fees, calculate the whatever, okay? And then the next member of your team
is a loss mitigation company. Yeah. So they're the ones that actually call the homeowners.
Yeah, they're the ones doing the workout.
Yes, they're actually doing the workout payment plan, and they know the rules about what you can and can't say to a borrower. And
so they're the actual ones trying to either get it reperforming or go through the foreclosure process, right?
Yes. And you also have title companies or attorneys.
Yeah, and that's important. So when you're looking at, does the property have liens on it and all that process, right?
Yeah, and they help you with due diligence too. So
the reality of it is a certain percentage of these, when you buy notes, a certain percentage of them will be reperforming. A certain percentage of them will be foreclosures.
Right.
A certain percentage of them will be deed in lieu, and a certain percentage of them will be short sales, right?
And that's why we are looking at purchasing at least.
Yeah. So what you do in reality is you purchase a package of 4 or 5 of these.
4 or 5. Yes.
Right.
Right.
So you're in for 200 to 250,000.
Right.
And then you're going to average out those returns. The 2 that you were able to reperform, you made 50% on those, but the 2 that you foreclosed on, maybe you only made 10% or 15% on those. And then you're going to average it all in so that overall you have a pretty healthy return, right? And the way you do that is you bring in, financial friends that have the capital invest and want those kind of returns. And then on your end, you utilize your team to actually work through, the whole process. It's about a year-long process.
It is. It takes about a year. Yeah.
Because of that seasoning period, right?
Right. Mm-hmm.
And so some of them are going to reperform. So in the whole package, it's about a year long process to get through it. And that's the interesting thing about it for me, is that most of the heavy lifting is your team members, your systems and processes you have in place, and knowing how to do that due diligence and knowing how to source the notes, and then putting that together with JV partners and going in on it together. And then when you exit out in a year, you split the profits, right?
Exactly. Yeah. So if you would like to learn more, or if you would like to contact us, you can contact us on Facebook at The Cashflow Couple. You can email us, John and Wynde, that's WYNDE, at thecashflowcouple.com. And we now have a YouTube channel, which is The Cashflow Couple. Please subscribe to our YouTube channel. That would be awesome.
Yeah, it helps if we get more subscribers, because there's some cool things you can do with YouTube once you get a certain number of subscribers. And we can bring more content to you there too.
Yeah, yep. Super cool. Super cool stuff. Excellent. Well, thanks for listening. We appreciate it. And if you have any questions, let us know. Merci. À bientôt.